The term Moor started to become interchangeable with the term black because it was basically the same thing. But when the slave trade started, they tried to objectify black people, Moorish people. So they would use the term interchangeably and they would just switch on to calling people black. But if you look at a lot of old documents, there's even slave ships called Blackamoor, if you look at slave records. There was even a boxer out of Virginia who was very popular in the early 1800s named Tom Molyneux, and his nickname was the Moor. So that name was definitely used interchangeably with black or Negro at that time.
Moor means black, like Negro, Ethiopian. Moor means black. Moor is not a people. Moor is a color. And they have taken this word Moor and they have associated Moor with Muslim. There were Moors that weren't Muslim. Moor means black. There were Christian Moors. There were Moors that practiced a traditional African faith system. So that Moor means black, simple.
When the Moors went into Europe, they changed the appearance of the population. Do you see? So you have Italians, Spaniards being darker than the Scandinavians. A Scandinavian person told me that they never considered the Italians or Jewish people to be white. Do you see? Because the lighter people are further north.
When I went to Europe, I would always look at pictures and I would always see a Moor, and sometimes I would see like a skull and bones. And many of the Moors would have a skull and bones flag. That's what pirates are known for. There were many Moorish pirates. There was even a Barbary War where the U.S. was fighting Moorish pirates up in North Africa and the Barbary Coast. And there's even a secret organization called the Skull and Bones. And we know that Masonry comes from Moorish science. So there's always a connection there with the Moors.
And it's important that as we begin to develop an understanding of this society, that it's not Freemason as we know, and that the Moors brought in this knowledge into Europe. Africans brought this knowledge into Europe. And in bringing this knowledge into Europe, the Knights Templars and other organizations were born out of this. And peoples of European descent were exposed to alchemy, okay? The periodic table of elements, the laboratory, how to take information, how to take elements and atoms, and to begin to manipulate them to make them into different types of molecules. The basic one is hydrogen, 2 hydrogen is helium, 3 hydrogen is lithium, 6 is carbon, 8 is oxygen. So you have this alchemy that's going to come, and they're going to begin to study, they're going to begin to learn, they're going to create societies that's going to develop an understanding. This is going to be what eventually is going to become Freemasonry, because only a select group of people in Europe is going to be exposed to this information.
But the secret of Masonry, of who we really are, the Moors, is being here on this land, this particular land, because it was called in many names. You had Turtle Island, that we called it, or Tula, or El Marak, the different terms that we had. And the original map of America was written by a guy named Idrisi. The original map was written in Sanskrit.
Antarctica was actually mapped by a Moor. And most people don't know it was mapped by a Moor. And they have old topographical evidence of old maps of Antarctica. That's why the Nazis fled there, because they knew that there were places there under the ice that they could actually inhabit and hide.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. You have 2 elders here, well, 3 elders, and your junior statesman, and a couple of weeks, he'll be 70 years old, Graham Weatherspoon, and he's been off to Dubai, where rich people go. So lend me some money, brother. I mean,
well, that's where the rich people live. That's where the rich people live.
You went on a cheap... But the reason why we bring up the Moors is that, you know, a lot of us from Harlem, from Brooklyn, wherever, we have no concept of what black people have done in history. So here at the Gilchrist Experience, as elders, we bring you the history of black people. So we have to realize that the Moors came into to Europe in 711, and they stayed there till 1492. With the Spanish Inquisition. And yet, the slavery trade started, I think it was a little earlier than that, but, you know, Columbus coming over in 1492 and discovering a land where people lived, and the destruction of the Americas, and the importation of free labor from Africa. Yet we stand here as a byproduct of that, what would you call that? What would you call slavery? Captivity?
A Holocaust.
Holocaust, the Black Holocaust. That's
A
interesting.
Holocaust. The
400
first
years.
Holocaust.
And now we have, we had 8 years of a black man, half black, half white, actually, and bringing some civility to America, with the hope that, and dream that this creed or this Constitution, which is equality for all, this myth that we all lived under and brainwashed by, thinking that you could be accomplish whatever you could by just working hard and being honest. And now today in 2019, the 21st century, we have a man in the White House that's belittles, bullies, lies, cheats, a whoremonger, what can we say, a white supremacist, and a con man. And worst of all,
master con man.
And worst of all, a New Yorker, a real New Yorker. He played the game for 70-something years when you could do anything in New York. You could, if you're smart, you played the game and you got ahead. But you could be honest and crooked, as long as you didn't kill anybody.
Honest and crooked. That's an oxymoron.
But, you know, well, you could do both. But most of us try to be fair. But this con is, and everybody's, the people who can't see through it have some underlying bias. I think it's basically white supremacy. We of the black community can understand it a little better because we've had to deal with it all our lives. But we have to be objective about the other people that really don't understand this stuff and are really brainwashed by believing that they're superior. And we've all had to deal with that superiority complex through our lives, through our manhood. The humility that it takes to really understand somebody that brainwashed to think they're superior to you. So, as a result, we got this madman in the White House convincing. I watched the trials this morning, and I was amazed that I understand lawyers can lie, but these guys were too good. I mean, if I didn't know any better, I would believe what they were saying. I imagine if I was white and I was in the predicament of not having anybody stand up for me, I'd be out there voting for him too, because they don't have a choice. I think a lot of people see him for what he is, but what they do is they go along with the program because they say their life will be stabler. They will be taken care of because they're white. All right? So this is what we're up against. Now, we can ignore it or play games and say go back to Africa or wherever, but our home is here. My home is here. I think we have to stick up for the 400 years that we put in here. So I call on all of us to unite and make some sense of all this. And for once, stick together as a team, no matter what your persuasion. And the righteous white people that look at this nonsense and say, what is going on? Is there no decency in the world? And here's some comments, gentlemen. Brother Clemson Brown, you haven't been around in a while.
Okay.
Welcome home.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back with you illustrious brothers. You know, black people play such a critical role in the making and shaping and defining of America. Our legacy is like no other people. And when you really look at it, see, the problem is the narrative that depicts and projects black people in America is so skewed, is so off-centered and so half delivered that people don't get a real understanding who Africans in America are. But Africans in America are the foundation of America. There is not 1 inch of land in America that has not been watered with African blood. Cotton was the economic foundation of America and Europe. And cotton is the product of the economic gift that Africans who worked from sun up to sundown and were never paid provided for America. They provided the cotton, which was the primary product that gave America its wealth. And
Tobacco,
Europe its wealth.
rice.
Rice, tobacco, indigo, all of your cash crops. So if you have free labor for 400 years, who wouldn't be rich? Who wouldn't be the richest continent? But to look at the contribution of African American as slaves is only half. You know, we keep looking at Africans brought to America, and we start off with slavery. But Africans brought to America were some of the most gifted and intellectual people. We open up talking about the Moors. These are the Moors. All of the foundation of knowledge comes out of Africa. All learning comes out of Africa. That's the African that came here doing slavery. We gave the world everything. We gave America everything. Now, I just want to say, because I want to pass this on, because I know y'all have such profound contributions. Bella's laughing. I can't wait for him to throw it in. But, you know, Trump is always talking about Robert E. Lee.
Oh, God.
But, you know, Robert E. Lee's, who was the general of the Confederacy.
He was a traitor, another traitor.
Not only was he a traitor, but what needs to be brought out is that it was black troops that captured Richmond, Virginia, New Market Heights. That story needs to be told. The 5th, the 7th, the 24th. All of these regiments were black troops that knocked a hole in the line at New Market Heights that enabled them to go through that line and capture Richmond, Virginia. And the price that those brothers had to pay, they got 12 Medals of Honor coming out of that one battle. And Robert E. Lee, who was held up in Richmond, Virginia, tried to escape and meet up with his army coming out of Tennessee. But the brothers trapped him at what's that? Appomattox. Trapped him at Appomattox, and after about an hour engagement, Robert E. Lee surrendered to those brothers, and they sent word to Robert E. Lee, who came down for the arrest, you know. But the problem was that they didn't punish this rebel insurgents that committed treason on the Union troops and the U.S. government. So had it not been for black troops, there would not be a U.S. flag flying over Washington, D.C., we'd have had a Confederate flag flying over Richmond, and this country would be entirely different. It is critical that everybody should know that black troops won the Civil War, liberated themselves, and set America free. That's the movie that needs to be produced and projected, because then it changes the narrative, it changes the vision and the image of African people in this country. Look, there's nobody else here like us. There's nobody else here who has given more. Washington, D.C., laid out by Benjamin Banneker, an African. I mean, if our history was ever told, and this is a part of reparations.
This is what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, that's what's on my mind.
Let me
How many about
I've heard Brother Bella, and I can't wait to hear him again. Brother Bella.
how many of our kids know this story?
They don't.
They don't know it.
This is what
where
the
we have
problem is.
They
failed.
don't know it.
Our
what the
children,
problem
we are not teaching the young. They are sitting, doing Facebook, listening to videos. We're not sitting our children down, reading to them,
Correct.
requiring them to read, and read things of substance. My mother's middle name was, you got nothing to do, go read a book. But we didn't have 200 cable channels in New York. You know, you had 2, 4, 5, 7, 9,
But
11,
then
and 13.
we're going to have to update ourselves.
Well, yes, we are responsible for teaching our children, not
Correct.
the Board of Ed.
That
But
is
we're going to have
correct.
to
It is
learn
a
to use the
parent's
tools that they're using now.
responsibility. We don't have parents parenting. It's easy to make a baby. It takes a real man or a real woman to raise a child. And we don't have that,
A village.
unfortunately. Forget about the village. It starts in the home
Yes,
with
it
the
does.
mother and the father.
The point is, how do we teach this as elders here? We know the methods that we came under. That doesn't exist anymore. I mean, that's old school. Now, you know, nobody reads like we used to read. You don't have to read like you used to read. All right? You can get an audio book and have someone read you a book to you.
Yeah, but the problem with that, and I tell young kids, is that you need to have the physical book. What they're doing now,
Well, I'm saying,
with
if you get the
computers,
physical book in front of you,
You
you can
need-
have it read to you.
No, you
That way
need
you
to-
can pick up the pronunciations and everything else.
Right, and that comes with time and effort, because if you don't have the physical book, what you're hearing, what they're giving you in an audio book, is not necessarily
I'm saying
what's
have
written
the
in
book
the
in
book.
front of you.
You've got to have a book. We have to have libraries. We gave the world
I'm just giving you an
libraries.
easier way today to read books.
It's not
You
about
have the
being
book-
easy, it's about doing it. There are certain disciplines that we need to have
Well, I'm giving you
and not
a-
be lazy. My grandmother used to say
You
laziness
can't-
will kill you.
Everybody can't go through that discipline, Graham. That's what I'm saying.
But this is
You
how
may-
we got where we are now, from being lazy. You have to. It's not about easy. Life is not easy. You know it, and I know it's not easy. What you went through in the Marine Corps and dealing with some of the people you had to deal with, that's not easy. And our kids have to be prepared. It's
easy
not
for me.
about easy. This instant on and microwave, all this stuff, they could not survive.
can't-
If systems collapsed, they could not survive.
The way we were raised, you can't raise your kids the same way. I don't think you can give them you have to utilize the tools that they have available.
These are not
to them.
tools.
Yes, they are.
They're not
You can-
survival tools. If
they're-
you can't subsist
Listen,
without
they
the
don't have to
internet,
go anywhere.
you're dead.
No.
The white man can shut the internet down tomorrow. And where the hell are you if you can't function without the internet? If you don't know how to read a book or where to go to find a book, or you don't know how to use the Dewey Decimal System to walk into a library and get a book, you can't do it.
Do you know what you can
there
do
are
with
basics
Google?
that they need to know.
Do you know what you can do with Google? You can find out anything that you need
If
to know.
they
through
shut
Google.
Google down,
They're going to shut Google down. That's not going to happen. You have to utilize what's available today. And we as elders have to understand that they ain't going to pay no attention to what we say to them.
They're
Because
shutting
they're
down.
already brainwashed to believe how they believe.
they are altering electronically. They have even altered the Bible electronically.
Yeah.
They are transferring and taking sections
course.
out of the Bible and if you don't have a written
That's
copy
right.
of the Bible, you will read the lies
right.
and you will believe the lies. You must have a copy. You must have a physical copy, because when the BS rolls out to you, you need to know it and be able to identify it.
Well, that's exactly what's happening now with Donald Trump.
Well, then you have to have a point of reference. You can't go with, oh, he said this and I saw that on TV. That doesn't make it real or true.
You take the reality of what's happening today. You watched that Senate hearing this morning?
I watched it, yeah.
And you watch how these guys con and lie for Donald Trump. It's insulting that they even think about this. I mean, we know this man. And here, just run number 2. I'm going to give you Hakeem Jeffries.
Hakeem tore it up today, man.
And you have to listen to what Hakeem says and maybe get a good gist of how much trouble I think we're in if we don't get decency restored to America. Because with Trump in there, we've got a demon. All right, run number 2 for me, please.
Of innocent Americans. Nonsense. 3, this blanket assertion of executive privilege. Nonsense. Let's take all 3. First of all, 17 different intelligence agencies have concluded that Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were successful. And that's also what the Mueller report shows. This is not a politically inspired witch hunt. I'm confused. Every single person at the helm of this investigation is a Republican. The person who initiated the investigation, former FBI Director James Comey, Republican. The FBI Director who replaced him and presided over the investigation, Christopher Wray, Republican. The person who decided to appoint a special counsel to preside over the investigation and then monitored it at the helm of the Department of Justice, the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, Republican. The person who actually conducted the investigation, a war hero, a law enforcement professional, Bob Mueller, lifetime Republican. Who is the Attorney General going to investigate? The Republican Party? The notion that it's a politically inspired witch hunt is just one of 10,000 or more misrepresentations that have been spun out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's a shame that you choose to adopt it and parrot it. Second thing, reputational interests? Really? Many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle actually perpetrated a witch hunt as it relates to securing more than 800,000 documents from this very same Department of Justice without regard to the reputational interests of Americans who have served this country. You weren't concerned with the reputational interests of Hillary Clinton. In fact, the top Republican said that the sole objective was to undermine her, the former First Lady and Secretary of State. You weren't concerned with the reputational interests of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. In fact, you embarrassed those two. They made mistakes, but you embarrassed those two. You weren't concerned with the reputational interests of Andy McCabe. So don't peddle that phony argument to us. This very same Department of Justice turned over 800,000 pages of documents, but they won't turn over a single page pursuant to a legitimately issued subpoena? And then you want to assert executive privilege. Are you kidding me? You can't assert executive privilege after the fact when the closest advisors to the president have already spoken to Team Mueller. Wait a second, let's try to go through this. White House counsel Don McCann talked to Mueller. There's no assertion of executive privilege. White House press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders talked to Mueller. No assertion of executive privilege. White House Communications Director Hope Hicks talked to Mueller. There was no assertion of executive privilege. It's a phony argument. The House is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We're not a wholly owned subsidiary of the Trump administration. We don't work for Donald Trump. We work for the American people. We have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. The Attorney General is totally out of control. He will be held in contempt of Congress. I yield back.
What purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That warms our heart because this is the nephew of Professor Jeffries. We see we've got our spirit represented there in Congress. And Kareem speaks for all of us. He sees the injustice, but that's a minor voice in this whole mess here. There are a few others I think I'll play back for you just to give you some other decent folks in Congress, white people, persons, white Americans, you know, because this has to be a united effort to get Russia out of our business. This is a fact. I don't see how anybody has any. I mean, it just boggles the mind to think that these guys talk the way they talk, and we've got Putin sitting there goofing on us, laughing at us, talking to Trump, and Trump is saying what? I heard him smiling on the phone? Huh? Is this man not crazy or what?
That's a salesman statement.
I heard him smiling on the phone?
Sure.
Oh, you're going to make some sense out of that one?
No, I'm telling you, when you're, I'm not going to go into that, but as a salesperson doing telephone sales, when you smile, it comes through the phone. But that's a training that I'm not prepared to even go into right now. Look, the first statement that he made, and I'm going back to the Moors, the first statement that he made about interfering in this democracy. Mm-hmm. If you spoke Spanish, would you be saying the same thing down in Venezuela?
Okay.
Right. I mean, it's a contradiction for a Democrat, whether I'm Hakeem, it don't matter who it is. It don't matter who it is. They had an election in Venezuela, and these guys are overthrowing it right in front of your face and then having hearings about the legitimacy of an investigation and stuff. This is showtime for us to look at it. This is not for us to become emotionally involved in it. All of them are liars. You can't stand up for the democracy of America being protected and being overthrowing a country X miles away from here. You just can't do it. You can, because we're seeing it.
It's being done.
It's being done right now in front of us. Right. It's not something that's coming out in a Senate report 10 years from now. We're seeing live, what they call live in real time. We're seeing in real time stuff that we have read about in books that happened in Guatemala 30, 40, 50 years ago with the overthrow of the Guatemalan government by the United Fruit Company. They even put that in Moody's. I'm going through Moody's one day and I'm saying, they had it in Moody's. Moody's, I'm saying, wow, man, they even put it in there. But it's hypocritical. But I'm not, look, Trump, we talk about how white people think. You know, some of them are white supremacists.
All of them, mostly. 90%.
There are people looking at this thing right now, jumping through their TV supers. And I ain't no white supremacist, and they're Caucasian.
They might not know it.
No. They benefit from it.
There you go. That's what I mean.
They benefit from it. But I'm not going to say that they are. But that's another discussion. What I'm really going after is that we really don't know how Caucasians think, because those studies have not been revealed to us. They're always studying us. They're always studying black people and our attitudes towards.
Don't you really know?
No, listen, please. When you take it in context, the election of Trump, in context, the time, the frame, it may be the same as any other year. But when you take it into consideration, Obama wasn't allowed to be an effective president by the Republicans. They set out to make him a failure. White folks don't see that. You can say it's white supremacy. They don't see that. They just see that the country wasn't run white or what. And then this guy comes in, he runs on a campaign, and he wipes out all of their best.
Right.
He wiped out all of the people that we have been following, that we have abdicated leadership to. Well, a white man can do a better job than a black man. We saw it in that election that no. And then this guy comes in, we should not become too emotionally involved in this guy. We should see him as someone that folks rally around. But we can't become emotionally, because we're going to miss something. He could leave tomorrow and go down in Antarctica, where Dr. Phil Valentine said, and live someplace down there. We would still be in the same condition, which goes back to what we have to do. I learned. I'm going back to Brother Witherspoon, and I'm going back to Brother Clemson. I learned black history on the corner of 125th Street, Pork Chop Davis.
Yeah.
And Pork Chop Davis did not, what you call it, he was running it.
Right.
We ran when he asked for money, but we came back the next night to see chapter 2. You understand? Pork Chop Davis, a brother that has not been written about too tough.
Reverend Kenyatta.
Kenyatta was there. No. Before him is a brother who was the.
Dr. Ben used to get up on the line.
Yeah. But see, Kenyatta was in the Nation. He wasn't out there on the corner. It was another black nationalist on the corner. But the point is that one-on-one teaching is not out of date. The lecture series up at Convent Baptist Church, First World, is not out of date. We have to do one-on-one with our children.
Well, we're doing, however many people watch this, I'm shocked amount of people that come up to me and say, oh, keep up what you're doing. So we can believe that what we're saying here is being felt by a lot of different people.
Yeah, but we always interject that if they watch this show, they got to do research and they got to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay?
Of course.
Do they take the action step?
I'm
That's
sure
what we
do.
have to repeat.
Hope so.
Now, I'm for the old and the new. Hidden Figures, Hidden Colors demonstrates the new. I mean, this is a fantastic, but brothers out there, young brothers don't know who Malcolm is. Young brothers don't know, I'm out on the street, they don't know who Farrakhan is. Young brothers out there don't know, when I say I'm not talking all of them, they don't know. You know who the man is? No, who is he? And they're honest. Young brothers out there have not been taught how to read. They don't know how to read. They're in high school and don't know how to read. We're in an emergency situation. That's why they get their cookies off buying sneakers, material thing. Formula, Brother Leroy. We have to instill into our young people a belief in God.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, amen.
That there is a supreme being.
Amen.
You can call him anything. You can dress him up certain ways.
Amen.
I ain't for no God that don't look like me, but we got to instill in our young people a belief in God, because we're dealing with our young people who are subject to satanic influences to the max. All right?
President
I'm saying
Trump.
because they listen to the music and we don't know what the music is saying.
That's right.
The lyrics are saying, glorifying pharmaceutical drugs that we don't. I just learned that the other day, but it's something old. It's they getting high off of this and a mixture of that, and doing all kinds of crazy things. We have to have a teaching of black history and not get sidetracked with going to the Board of Education to teach our children black history when they're the source of teaching our people lies. They ain't teach us. We came through, we learned about Spanish Inquisition, but we didn't know the ingredients of it. That was to undo what the Moors had set in,
Yeah, right.
which were Muslims.
We didn't even hear
Islam.
about that in school.
Okay,
Right.
you read about this thing and the things that the Christians did to the Jews and the Muslims, but we didn't know that the Muslims were Moors, that they were black, and that they had brought civilization to Europe in that part of the peninsula, and that their presence there led to the European Renaissance.
Right.
It led to that.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing that I learned from Dr. Shabazz, who was responsible during the time of his life, who was responsible for the majority of black math PhDs in America,
Whoa.
Dr. Shabazz. All right?
Okay.
At any rate, he said when the Europeans took over, they went through the libraries and they began to rewrite as though they had, I'm talking about in Spain, when they took over and they chased the Moors out in 1492, they began to rewrite the books as though they had written it.
That's it.
You hear of algorithms and today as it relates to computer. Logarithms come from blacks, the Moors.
Right.
All right? So I'm not going through. Our people looking at this show have to do research. They should get World's Great Men of Color, Blacks in Science, World's Great Men of Color by
J.A. Rogers.
J.A. Rogers.
Volumes 1 and 2.
Volume 1 and 2, and they can read this and enjoy it and read it with their children. They should get Blacks in Science by Van Sertima, Ivan Van Sertima,
yeah, right.
all of his books. They should get all the DVDs that are out there. They should go to 125th Street, across from the Apollo Theater. They got 3 book stands. Jack Felder's book stand is there. His son runs it. And he has all these books. Some are what you call collector's items, like Shashi McIntyre, the criminalization of a race. That's way before the new Jim Crow.
Giap.
Giap. So I'm saying, going back to treason, the Confederate guy. If they had won, they would say Grant was a traitor.
Exactly.
All right. So they were brothers fighting brothers.
Right.
And when they were never punished for what they did to us. And then 1877 they removed the troops from the South. That was the great, what they call the great betrayal. It was called the Great Compromise. That's what we learned in school, but we didn't learn the significance of it. That's when all hell broke loose.
That was the election
Ku Klux
of
Klan and everything else came up.
right.
The great, and that's what's
Poll
happening
tax.
now.
You
We
know,
have to study history to see the pattern. One last thing.
There was some kind of deal made between the presidents running for office, and he had to. I think
It was a repeat of
college.
it was a repeat of the election we just came through. They made a deal with the Electoral College.
Right, that's what. It
And
was.
that's when,
Which president was that?
I can't tell you the name, but it's anyone looks up the Great Compromise and they look up the Great Betrayal. It's the one and the same.
1877.
When Brother Clemson was talking about the black generals, the black soldiers capturing Robert E. Lee's army,
Right.
and that's a story that has not been told. It put me back to World War II when the blacks freed the people from
Either Auschwitz, Buchenwald, one of those.
Yeah.
the black men.
They
Did
were
that.
black
That's
men.
right.
And there was a piece written on this years ago.
Brother did the film,
He
and they
did
went
the
crazy.
film.
I
The
know.
Liberators. It was called The Liberators.
I worked for a man that knew that.
And he was
I
one
worked
of
for
the
a Jewish
men.
family right up the street here that knew
Who
the
knew
story.
that?
Who knew the story.
Who verified
Who knew
it.
the story. And they actually, well, after Emmett Till was killed, I mean, they really took me in as I was family.
Yeah, there were black soldiers
But
that went
because
in
the
and
black
liberated
soldiers that came into
Jews.
into the camps.
Right,
A lot of people
right.
don't realize that during World War II, who would they send? What troops would they send in to clean up dead bodies? You know what I mean? Or to liberate the camps? They'd send in blacks.
Or to wash the laundry.
There were black men that died in the concentration camps. Another thing they don't talk about is the numbers of black men who remained in Europe after the end of World War I. They chose to remain in Europe as
Because it was
opposed to
better.
come back to the conditions in this country.
Right.
They married women, They had children. Adolf Hitler said they got to go just like the Jews got to go. The gypsies got to go. Anybody who's mentally defective. There were thousands of black men who had married into families in Europe, and all of them were wiped out in the concentration camps. They don't talk about that.
There were some that survived. Wasn't all of them. Some survived. And I'm not saying it's contradicting you. John Williams, the author, John Williams, maybe his last novel was on a black jazz pianist who was in the camp. But it was a novel. It was a novel. I can't tell you the name of it, but John A. Williams, the novelist, if you go into Google, you look for his books, his last book was on this jazz pianist. It's a great story. It's a great story. And it talks about how he survived, okay, in the camp. And there's a documentary, they call the Something Bastards. That's what the Germans call them.
Bastards?
No, that's not it. I just can't call it to mind. But the fact is, when you study history, history repeats itself. So therefore, when Clemson mentioned this, I didn't know that, but I knew about the Patton thing, the battalions that General Patton.
Right.
And so we have to look. Christians there in the audience, the African Methodist Episcopalian. African Methodist Episcopalian. There's a history in that name. You can teach yourselves, you can teach the people in your church about why it's the African Methodist Episcopalian. And Paul Robeson's church is a block away from Abyssinian. And I think it's Mother Zion, African Methodist.
Mother Zion, that's a famous church for the Underground Railroad.
And that's history.
That's 139th.
My point is, we cannot, we cannot overlook any opportunity to teach our grandchildren, because they don't know. They don't know. And let me see, the old and new, willing to listen. The black youth who are most willing to listen are the ones in jail, because they can't go nowhere.
Yeah.
And we have to find a way to get that knowledge to them as best we can. And shutting down the internet. Facebook just banned Minister Farrakhan from Facebook. And
along with a lot of right-wingers.
Well, they brought these guys in to make it look nice, but they had their target set on Farrakhan anyway. They portrayed Farrakhan as dangerous. What do you mean? He ain't got no AR-15s. His guys don't carry, the Fruit of Islam don't carry weapons, etc. But tomorrow night, Thursday night, Minister Farrakhan is making a statement. It will be on noi.org, and that's at 8 p.m.
Okay.
Tomorrow, Thursday night. But what we're doing, what you're doing here, and I am thankful to be an invited guest to the show.
Your family, man. What are you talking
about? We are, but this is, we have arenas, you know. It's so very vital. What you're doing, Brother Nat Wood and other shows like it, very vital. Just a little bit of knowledge going out and a whole lot more motivation to our people to do the study and take it to our families.
Okay.
That's a plea.
All right. You know what I want to do? I want to show reference to run the next representative of Congress. It doesn't have a number, but the next representative. Run that next piece. It's a few minutes. I want you to hear what this woman has to say about the hearing this morning before we only have about 15 minutes to go. But run this one small piece. I want you to hear this. You see where it is? I think it's the third one. Representative, I forgot her name. Yeah, there you go.
that we received this morning. I received it here in hand at about 10 o'clock this morning. A letter dated today, May the 8th, 2019, addressed to the President, the White House, Washington, D.C. Dear Mr. President, I am writing to request that you make a proactive assertion of executive privilege with respect to the Department of Justice documents recently subpoenaed by the Committee on Judiciary of the House of Representatives that is signed by William Barr, Attorney General, not personal attorney to the President, Attorney General Barr. And I contrast that with something I was taking a look at, dated January 29th of last year, 2018, written by personal attorney for the President, John Dowd, to Robert Mueller. In response to Robert Mueller asking for the President to come on in and testify, to interview with the President and discuss concerns regarding the report and the investigation. There's a list of some 15 areas of concern that the special counsel asked for the President to come on in and discuss. And guess what his personal attorney, John Dowd, said during this long letter? After reviewing the list of topics you presented, it is abundantly clear to the undersigned that all of the answers to your inquiries are contained in the exhibits and testimony that have already been voluntarily provided to you by the White House and witnesses, all of which clearly show there was no collusion with Russia and that no FBI investigation even could have been obstructed. Farther down in the letter, we all remain in agreement that your office has received unprecedented access and voluntary cooperation in the collection of all documents requested by the White House. It goes on to further say, in an effort to provide complete transparency, the President waived the obviously applicable privileges where appropriate in order to show both the Congress and the special counsel to see all relevant documents. His personal attorney more than a year ago waived the privilege, said everybody came in, they had the right to testify, they had the right to meet, they spoke for hours, whether it was McGahn or any others, Hope Hicks and others. And yet this morning, the Attorney General asked the President, please claim, put a big drape over this thing. Please claim privilege. And then we later got a letter from the Attorney General saying he's claimed privilege. So I guess there was a conversation there. Imagine that. An Attorney General sworn to uphold the oath of his office to be an independent, highest voice of the law of the land, hanging a heavy drapery of distortion, distraction, and deception over this incredible, important investigation. Mr. Chairman, we are at a grave moment. I thank you for holding this very important hearing on contempt. Our constitutional system of government is in jeopardy. We have to make sure that we protect the rule of law. We are up against an administration that cares nothing for the rule of law, cares only for self, and we need to see the entire Mueller report. Mr. Barr has given away his credibility here. We know that. His letters have no meaning because they do not reflect the truth. And so I stand in support of your amendment and, of course, in support of the underlying contempt report. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, reason why I'm playing this, those of us that are not paying attention, I mean, this is blatant, in your face. You know, I mean, this Barr, this William Barr, who actually wrote a resume out to be hired by the con man Trump. I mean, Trump is caught red-handed, and he's conning his way out of this. And what's so amazing to me is that people are sticking up for him. You didn't hear the rest of these guys speak up for him. I mean, I look at no collusion, no anybody that saw Barr stand in front of everybody, 2 hours before he let the report come out, knows how the man lied. But yet you go to Fox News and they're just ranting and raving. I mean, this is a third of the country that's controlled by Fox News. I'm talking about 39% of the populace and 80–90% of the Republicans. These people have, and I call them all white supremacists. All right. When let me finish this. When Trump said, "Make America great again," he was saying, "Make America white again."
Yeah.
No doubt about it. We have to understand that this is a racist, so-and-so, and somehow teaching our kids who the white supremacist is really important to fair-minded people throughout the planet, not just here.
Gilchrist, I've been looking at this and I've been trying to understand what is it that is really going on. I can see some men being a bootlicker to Trump, some, but not in the numbers that they are following this man and putting their not only career but everything behind to keep him afloat and to keep him in power and to keep them in power. So what I've come to feel is that while it's not this individual thing to support Trump because he's Trump or any of that, it has to be a greater idea, a greater motivation. And what is that?
White supremacy.
And I
white
see
supremacy.
that white people are disappearing all over the planet.
That's it.
Their birth rate
Survival.
is falling, and in most countries, it has fallen below the ability to recruit. So they know that in 50 to 70 years, white people will not be able to return the ability to remain in power is very low, is very slim. So if they are to remain in power, this they consider their last stand, and Trump is really the token that we see out there. Behind Trump, maybe even greater money and people and movement, because you have all of these secret organizations, and there's just a lot. But why they, you know, and if you really look at it, because I look at.
You think it's Illuminati?
All of that is taking place. There's something so diabolical that Europeans, and not all Europeans, because some Europeans and a lot of black folk are looking at humanity and understanding if humanity is to survive, humanity is going to have to work together. I mean, and so there is a pathway for our survival, but that pathway is for our survival as a collective.
Winston said white supremacy and fear is a motivator.
Yeah.
They have never been the majority on the planet. Never.
That's right.
They have,
But
like
they've always
Trump,
been in control.
Right. Like Trump, they've advertised a sham. All right? He was broke. He had no money. I'm a billionaire. I got my name here. They were never a majority. They've always been the minority.
Right.
They have not built civilizations.
That
You
is
talked about the Moors earlier, who realized on the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century, the Visigoths and the Vandals had come through there and destroyed everything. The word vandalize comes from the Vandals who came out of Northern Europe. They didn't build anything. They destroyed everything. There were Muslim recon groups that came across the Strait of Gibraltar, notified their leaders in Mali of the crap that was going on
That's
there.
right.
And he said, no, we got to go over there and clean that up, because if we don't, they'll be coming over here.
That was before 7/11.
Right, before 7/11. So Africans went into the Iberian Peninsula, beat and ran the Visigoths and the Vandals back out across Spain up into France. Black people brought plumbing, bathing, hygiene. We brought that into that region of the world. That was in the 8th century. Meanwhile, East Africa, the Nubians came up out of there in the 1st century. Rome was built by black men. Europeans didn't know how to build cities. They found cities when they ventured into Africa and they saw the buildings. I'm going to show it to you.
You have to show me.
I'm going to show it to you because black men and women were running Russia, Finland, Germany,
There were a few, but
Scandinavia. More than that, I'm going to send you the photos.
okay.
They were on the coinage of these countries. Benjamin Franklin said, I don't want people from Germany, Ireland, or Scotland. He named the countries they didn't want the people from. You know why? Because they were mixed in with African blood. And he knew that the Germans had, Africans ran Saxony, Germany. They ran it, all right? The Habsburgs of Germany ran not only Germany, but France, Scotland, Ireland, all mixed in with black blood. Skoda, the daughter of the Pharaoh, before Jesus was born, left Egypt and settled in what is called the British Islands. Scotland is named after Skoda, the daughter of an Egyptian pharaoh. All right? So black people were there. They had to whitenize the history. Black people were shipped out of Scotland and Ireland to the West Indies. Not as slaves, but as free people shipped in the 1500s when the slave markets were going. They were shipped out because they wanted the blacks out of the British Isles. This is not taught in schools.
Nope.
When you talk about black history, kids are talking about slavery and plantations. That's not our history. That's a small segment of our history. Black people developed Europe from the west to the east. We enveloped Europe, and Europe gained from it. We built Rome and all those major cities because the Europeans knew nothing of architecture, knew nothing of it.
To update ourselves to today, 2019, and with Donald Trump in the White House and conning everybody, no matter what color you are. But we got to know your history. Well, the history of Donald Trump is that he's a con, and he's laying it to us real thick this week. And after seeing the Senate hearing this morning, everybody go home and just revamp your mind, your soul and spirit. Understand, we have to rise up and learn to be friendly, all colors, and get rid of this indecent exposure. That's all it is. It's a demonic force. And you have to learn that the God in me loves the God in you. I don't care what your complexion is. Peace, power to the people. We got a minute left to the Bronx. But to continue that, we come here every week to try to give you some knowledge and some spirit, which is even more important, that we give you the heart to carry on, because it's a struggle out here. No matter what age you are, the older you get, the worse you see, because you younger guys don't know how nice it used to be. When people were decent human beings. We're all decent inherently. There's a God in everybody. I don't care what your religion, where you come from. That's part of you. That's your DNA that God sent in us. So you got to reach out and find it. You got to know your purpose. Your purpose is to love one another. God is love. The devil is hate. And we got Donald Trump. What? What is that? What is that? That's not human. Power to the people.
It's not human. You're right. And it is demonic.